Hey guys, Ben with Ben's Viewfinder here, and we are here today to discuss Silver Efex Pro. Now, a lot of people ask me what type of editing softwares I use, and I use a lot. I can do black and white stuff directly through Camera Raw in using just the filters in Photoshop. I do it through On1 has a pretty good black and white effects. Topaz has a pretty good black and white effects, but my go-to one, the one I really prefer, is Silver Efex Pro. And I'm going to show you a couple reasons why, and really it has to do with control. You can do, pardon me, I burped. You could do a lot with Silver Efex Pro. This is a raw. This is one of my shots from Italy, my Venice, and this isn't a very good shot. I'm not planning on using this, which is why I chose it. But I'm going to give you a few different examples of photos and a couple of different setups, and we'll look at them really quick and show you. So basically, Silver Efex Pro is part of Nik Collection, which is offered from Google, and I think the entire collection is roughly $150, maybe $200, depending on coupon codes, things like that. And it will be the best money you ever spend on editing stuff. It is my go-to filter package for almost every photo edit I do. As you can see here, I do use some Imagenomics stuff for noiseware and for portraiture, for like fixing skin blemishes and things like that when I do portrait work. I do use Topaz Labs. I like their remask a lot, and I use their adjust occasionally. Most of their effects seem to be just a tad bit too overdone for me for Topaz adjust, but I do like the effect that it can have sometimes, and really I'll use it in masked layers and things like that. But Nik Collection, honestly, I use almost all of these things. I can tell you that I've used every single one of these at one point or another. I use their output sharpener a lot on scenery photos and stuff like that, where I want to just kind of increase the sharpness a little bit before printing. I use Color Efex Pro. There's quite a few filters in there I use. But anyways, I will go over that stuff some other time, but today we are discussing Silver Efex Pro. So let me launch Silver Efex Pro and give you a simple guide of it to start off with. And hopefully it's not going to load all the stuff I did before, and it did not. So that's great. So this is a screen you're shown when you first launch Silver Efex Pro, and what you're going to notice is that there's a lot going on here, but we'll break it down really quick. So on the left hand side is going to be your presets that they offer. So these ones up here at the top, the all classic, vintage, modern, recently used, and favorites, are the ones that they give you. And you can scroll through these and click on them, and they'll have different effects. And you're going to notice that right down the middle there's this line going on, and this line separates before and after, and you can slide it. If you come up here and click on it, you can slide it back and forth to be all before or all after, to kind of see before and after. Or up here you can choose to just see the after. That's the split view. Or you can do a side by side where they show you the full before and the full after. I like the slider view. I don't know why. I guess I just like to see my image as big as possible and really see the details, so I can go back and forth and kind of go, you know, do I like this little area in here better or worse when I slide it back and forth? So you can click through these, and some of these presets are pretty good. It really depends on the situation, depends on the type of photo you're editing and what you're looking for. And you can actually create your own presets, and you can import ones that other people have set up for you. So there's a lot of options as far as that's all concerned. But we'll go back to neutral right now, which is just the baseline when you come in. And then you'll have your screen here, which is your preview screen for the image that you're working on. And then over here is going to be all of your adjustments. So even when you click on, if you watch these adjustment bars, these are all zeroed out. As you can see, this is just neutral. But if we go to the underexposed, you can see that these move. My brightness has gone down, my highlight brightness has gone down. And honestly, you'll probably see, let me reduce these, because when you come into Silver Efex Pro initially, you will probably see this type of menu here. And you'll see that there are three types of adjustment areas. There's brightness, there's contrast, and there's structure. And obviously they do exactly what you think they would do. This controls the brightness of your image, this controls the contrast or the punch of your image, and this controls the amount of details that you see in your image. Each of them will be important in different situations. Now you can also expand these like this if you click these little down arrows, and you're going to get a lot more options. And these will affect, let me bring this over so we're just working on the actual image itself now. after you even select a preset, so we just pick a preset here. Let me pick one that's actually not too horribly bad. Okay, we'll just go with push process. And so you can see that the image isn't actually that much different. All it is turn up the structure. But you can mess with this from here now. So we picked a starting point. We decided that push process was the point that we wanted to start with. And then, but let's say I thought it was too bright. So I want to turn down the brightness. Okay, obviously it's too much. But you can start at a preset and then start messing about and choosing how you want the image to look afterwards. So, and then in here, inside of these, you can be able to control certain aspects of the image without messing with other parts. So under brightness, you can choose whether or not you want just your highlight brightness, your midtones brightness, or your shadow brightness. And that's just going to simply have to do with the dark, the middle, and the really bright pixels inside of your image is what's going to affect. So if I start messing with the shadow, you can see that the dark pixels inside the image tend to be the ones that are the most affected. Where the bright pixels up here, when I turn this shadow brightness all the way down, you can see that the bright part of the images aren't really affected. We'll go ahead and zero that out. And again, it works the same way with the highlight brightness. And now that one's obviously not going to have quite the same dramatic effect as the darks. But you can see that it's not really affecting this stuff down here, it's just affecting this up here. It's going to work the same way down here in contrast. You can choose to boost your whites if you want your whites to really get blasted up. Or you can boost your blacks. And then you have contrast and you have soft contrast. And basically think of, same thing with dynamic brightness and fine structure down here, is think of them as a more refined choice. So if I turn brightness up in the image, it's going to blast out the entire image. Or if I go back here and I turn up just dynamic brightness, you can see that it doesn't become as drastic. What it's doing is it's going through and looking at it in a different algorithm and choosing what part of the images need to be light and what part of the images need to be darkened and what we're going to choose to boost. And so it's the same thing if you go from here, or if you go with soft contrast, it's going to choose it differently. If you look at that contrast compared to that contrast, it's just going to be a slightly different effect, a slightly different way of calculating how it comes about those things. So think of it really simply. Like I said, brightness, contrast, details. So you can mess about with these to get some really cool effects. So I don't want to go into too much detail here, so let's move on to another thing that's important. So we'll go and collapse those. You do have protections so that if you get if you start adjusting some stuff too much, you can mess with your shadows, you can mess with your highlights. I don't tend to mess with these very much. They don't do a whole ton, but they do help out a little bit. They'll help basically recover details or things like that in your highlights or your shadows if you make like an over adjustment. Now here's going to be something that is really going to separate a lot of, almost all of the Nik collection altogether, but really in Silver Efex Pro it helps a ton, is control points. This is something that Nik came up with that is just genius. And what it really is it allows you to make local adjustments in areas of your photo without affecting other parts of the photo. So let's say in this case I wanted to change the brightness of just this sky. Now the problem with this is going to be that my pixels in my sky are same as a lot of these in these buildings. This is white and these are basically white. So you're going to notice there's going to be a spillover. But what you can do is basically choose an area and a control point is going to select that pixel or the group of pixels where you put this point, and it is going to look at the pixels surrounding it and it's going to only affect the pixels of the same type. So in this case, if this top slider bar here next to the dot is going to be the size of your affected area, and as you can see here, let me move this to the middle of the screen here, and as you can see, as I move that, it is affecting the size of the area of the image that we're messing with. And then below that is a brightness slider, and so here we'll put this on this dark part of this gondola here, and we'll see if all goes to plan. I didn't practice this. It should not really affect the water around it, but it should simply affect the dark pixels on the gondola. It might affect some of these little bit of darker pixels in here. But if we turn down there's a brightness, a contrast, and structure, just like there was over here on the right hand side, and it's just the local adjustments, and hopefully it should only affect stuff in the general range of this circle. So it might affect a couple of the gondolas around it, and it should only really affect pixels of that same brightness or tonality. So let's try turning down the brightness, and as you can see, notice how the water's not being changed, but the brightness of the dark pixels of the gondolas are being changed. So this allows you to really fine-tune an image. If you want certain details to pop out, if you want certain things to be dark, if you want certain things to be light, you can literally go through and you can drop 100 of these control points anywhere on this image. You can go nuts. And it can be more than 100 probably, I don't know. But you can sit here and I can mess with every single thing. I can decide to drop a control point here on these white pixels and drop the brightness of these buildings a little bit. I mean, in this case, obviously, it doesn't look very good or whatever. And then I can drop another control point down here and say I want this water to be darker. Or, you know, you can do whatever you want. You can keep dropping these. So if you notice, and you can go back and change them afterwards. So let's say I want to go back and make these buildings brighter again. Or I wanted to affect a larger area in that case. Or I wanted to have more contrast. You can do that. And then I want to go back to the gondolas. And I decide I want to make that a larger adjustment. As you can see, I make it larger. And it can mess with more stuff. So control points are very helpful to really just kind of fine-tune an image how you want it. So if you have like an area where the sun is beaten down on it and you really want to bring down the highlights in that area without really affecting the rest of the image, you can drop one of these control points on top of it. You can affect the highlights there or the brightness there without affecting the rest of your image and making the whole image dark. Same thing if you decide you want something to be bright, whatever. More structure, more details in certain areas, but you want other areas to be softer, you can turn the structure down or up. Okay, so we're going to bring this all back to 0. And we'll talk about something else. So let's go back to neutral. And what I'm going to talk to you about now is color filters. And what color filters do is basically, this is an old technique from black and white processing that they've had forever, since before computers existed. And what they allow you to do is put a color filter over a black and white image. And the only way this works is based on what would be the negative or your original image. If you bring a black and white image into Photoshop, into Silver Efex Pro, and you try to use these color filters, they're not going to work. What it's going to do is it's going to take the pixel data from your image. So in this case, we had the color image, the raw that we started with. It's going to take those pixels and say, okay, some of these are blue, some of these are red, some of these are magenta, some of these are cyan, whatever. It's going to take those, and what you can do is use color filters to brighten the colors that you choose, the main colors that you choose, and darken. I think that's right. It might be vice versa, but I'm pretty sure that's right. It'll brighten the color filter that you choose, and it'll darken the opposite color, so primary versus complementary colors or whatever. It's going to brighten and darken those images. And so as you can see, as I click through here, and it may not have a huge effect on these, but you have these different color options, and this is your neutral all the way to the left. And I'm actually colorblind if you didn't know that about me, so I won't be able to tell you what all of these are off the top of my head. But as you click through, you're going to notice that different parts of the image start getting affected. So this color filter has boosted this color and has darkened this main color, the darkness of this, and then boosted or brightened its opposite colors. Again, we switch to another color filter, we switch to another color filter, and as you can see, it's having a pretty drastic effect depending on what you click on. So that's pretty cool. That's kind of like way different than what we start with. If you go back to neutral, I believe the one on the far right is your blue boost. So if you look, this is our neutral. But let's say we want to really make the gondolas pop. That's kind of cool looking, isn't it? And so color filters are a way for you to really accentuate things, especially in black and white processing. My image I'm using here isn't a very good image for this, and I can show it to you in the next image. Actually, let me just go ahead and do that. I'm sorry, I obviously didn't plan this out. We're going to move on to the second image here, and we'll bring this in Silver Efex Pro. And this image I produced recently is some palm trees in Kauai, my new home, that I'll be moving to shortly. And then this image, this is going to work a little bit better because we have some really dark or some really vibrant colors in this one. So again, you need to start with the color image. We'll go into Silver Efex Pro, and we can use that blue filter in Silver Efex Pro to darken those blues and boost its opposite colors. So boom. Nope, I'm backwards. See, I was backwards. I said darken and lighten, it was lighten and darken. So I want to choose its opposite, and I think that this one is red. I think the one on the far left is red and the one on the far right is blue, and then everything in between I'm not quite sure. So I think if we click on the red, the sky's going to go dark and the opposite's going to go light. Yep, see, there we go. I got it backwards. Sorry, my brain doesn't really work when I'm trying to do these, so I'm not the greatest teacher. But so as you can see, this is the effect. And I guess I don't want to say it's exactly the effect because I never talked to Ansel Adams. I don't know Ansel Adams. I would have loved to, but I never had the pleasure. But these are the type of things that he used when he would process his image in dark rooms. When he would go through and he would pick out how he wanted his images to be presented, he'd use things like color filters and things like that in the darkroom to accentuate the parts of the sky. So if you notice that, like in some of his images, the sky is really dark, even though it's the middle of the day, or even though it's a nice, bright, vibrant blue sky, probably in person, he wanted to make that dark. He didn't want that part to be accentuated. He used things like color filters to make that happen. And so we'll click through them all. We'll go back to neutral. This is just the baseline. I believe that's the red filter. I'm not quite sure what filter this is. It doesn't seem to be changing. That one affects it a little bit, especially around the beach, around the water down here. That one seems to have a bigger effect. And that one almost gives it almost a silhouetted type thing because it's boosting the bright, the vibrant blues, and it's darkening its opposites, the darker colors. So anyways, we'll start here, and again, you can do things like control points, brightnesses. You can really mess with this. You can change your midtones. You can boost some contrast if you want. You can do whatever you want, really. And again, you can just sit here and you can mess with things, and let's say I want to make the rest of the sky a little bit darker, but I didn't really want to affect the palm trees. I want the sky to kind of match the rest of the sky. You can see I did that with a control point now, and so there you go. It was that simple to adjust, because that part of that sky, before I had this here, you can see as I delete the control point, this sky's a lot brighter than some of these other parts of the sky. So I wanted to bring this down a little bit, so I just simply put a control point there and drop the brightness a little bit, try and get more on par with the rest of the sky, and then we moved on. And now another cool thing I want to point out, so color filters are cool. I usually, when I bring an image into Silver Efex Pro, the first thing I do is cycle through the color filters and kind of see the different effects it gives me and see if any of those look interesting, along with looking through my presets and kind of getting an idea where those go, kind of finding my starting point, and then I move up and start messing with the actual fine adjustments and start putting in control points and start doing things like that to kind of refine my image how I really want it. Now, let me see what else I wanted to cover here. I just want to make sure that I'm covering everything for you guys. Oh, one thing I did want to mention is that with these control points, if you have a control point here, you do have a couple options. You can either click on it and hit the backspace key and it's going to delete it. Or you have the option to go over here and you can click on delete. And if you have a bunch of control points, let's say I add another control point here, and add another control point here, you can select over here in the hierarchy which control point you want to select. And as you can see, as I click on each one of these, the little menus are coming up next to those. And if I want to get rid of one of these, I can either click on it, hit the backspace key, or you have the little trash can icon down here that will get rid of it. And so now I've gotten rid of those extra control points. And now let's say you really like this effect. Like in this case, I like the way that this affected the sky and I want more of that. There's this icon here that will duplicate that control point, or any control point you have, and it'll duplicate the brightness, the contrast, and the structure, and the area of that. And then you can just simply drag and put it wherever you want in your image to darken your sky or do whatever you want. So obviously in that case it doesn't look very good, but you get my idea. So if you ever create a control point, a good example I can use that I don't have here is like if you're darkening a road or something in a black and white image, because sometimes in black and whites the roads look better if they're dark. And so you'll put a control point over a road to darken the road a little bit, and then you want to continue that on down the road, but you don't want it necessarily affect too many pixels outside of it. So you can duplicate those control points and just keep moving them up the road, and that way you can darken the road. I don't know, we can use it for a lot of other things, but that gives you an idea to start. Now, your film types are something that most people are not going to mess with, but I guess they can be useful if you're really old school and you have some different types of film or anything like that that you've ever used that you really liked, or you liked a certain effect, or really they just, again, you can filter through them almost like regular Photoshop filters and kind of see the different effect that they have on your image, and if something really looks great to you, you can go with it. But I don't tend to mess with these too much, but they are there for you to mess with if you really like them. They'll just add a different effect. You can mess with grain in your image. You can make pixels softer, harder. You can choose how many grain per pixels with your with these different filters. So let's pick one that's really, just trying to pick it out here. So you can see the grain per pixel is 115, and it's a much harder pixel. We're neutral. Again, just like your adjustments up at the top when we were messing with the presets, it's just going to affect this. And so we can sit here and we can make it, now it's more noisy. And now we make it harder pixels. We can make them softer pixels. We can make it less grains per pixel. You know, so basically, just like your adjustments up top, it's going to add a different effect. You adjust your sensitivities to certain color levels. So if you want to boost certain levels in your image, let's see, so like blues, like we were doing with the color filters, you can see we can make it really dark, really bright. But this is more of like a refined adjustment to your image rather than using just a normal color filter. This is a more advanced way of doing it, where you can boost and affect different things in your image. So in this case, I'm really boosting because I had a harsh sunlight here, so I'm boosting the yellows, bringing down the blues, so I'm making the sky dark, but the highlights from the sun really bright. And so you can really create some really cool effects using this. No, they're not the most realistic looking things in the world, but they're fun anyways. You have your basic levels and curves adjustment here, which you can mess with. And again, I think you can do multiple points on this, making it like an S curve like you can on your normal curves layers on your in Photoshop. And again, if you want to get rid of these, if you decide to make an adjustment, let's say you make that adjustment and you let go, if you ever want to get rid of these points, you just simply drag it off the side of the screen and let go, and it'll default back to 0. I know this is becoming a long video, but I think Silver Efex Pro deserves it. So, and I want to give you guys a full introduction. That way, when you come in here, you don't feel as lost. So we're moving down. Let's go to the finishing adjustments here. And I know this image doesn't look great. It's not really the point. The point is to show you the features, to get you started. You mess with your images. Each image is going to be different. So I want you to mess with it. But I'm just giving you an introduction to the different menus and the different options. Also, really quick before we move into the finishing adjustments, there is a zoom layer up here. So you can move in. And you can move this little box around if you want to see different parts of the image. Whatever you like. Try to put it back. Alright. We can change the background color. So if you're editing something that's very black in nature and you don't want to have a black background color, you can click on that once. It's going to make it a white background. You can click on it again. It's going to make it a gray background. You can click on it again. It's going to make a black background. So just really depends on what you prefer, but it helps sometimes, like if these borders are really dark around your image and it's blending into the background, you can just click on that, so that way you can see your edges a little bit better. So nice little feature they offered. And these are just hideaway panels. Same thing, you have this on this side. If you want to get rid of these adjustments, you can click on that, and that way you have more working space. If you're not using the adjustments, you can click on that again to bring it back. Same thing over here, there's one for the presets if you want to get rid of that. So there you go. Alright, so let's go into finishing adjustments. Let me there's no fit screen. I always forget there's no fit screen in this in here. But alright, so we've got here, and what we're going to do is you next have tonal adjustments. And what this is kind of cool for is creating again, another layer of effects to an image, but sometimes you see older images like old style vintage looking sepia photos, or that have been kind of like yellowed with age or whatever, or sometimes you'll see kind of these cool blue toned monochromatic photos. You know, there's like, sorry, I'm sounding ridiculous, I'm rambling on, but my point is that these add some really cool effects. And as you can see, as I cycle through these, they just bring a whole different effect to your image. And sometimes, like in this case, let's say, you know, since this is a beach photo, so maybe I'd want a blue toner of some sort like this, or even a selenium toner to kind of accentuate the kind of cool feeling of it. But let's say it was a photo of Italy or something like that. We really wanted to accentuate kind of the Tuscan feel of it. You go down to these kind of coffee filters and give it this kind of interesting feel to it. Or if you're doing a, I don't know. Basically, you have all these different options, sepia tones, all different types of stuff. And so again, this is a whole nother level of just offering tonalities to your image beyond just being a basic black and white photo. So these can be really cool. So check these out too. So we'll go back to neutral. Next thing is going to be a vignette control. And again, under these tonalities, I should mention that you can affect everything in these tonalities. So if you choose one of these really drastic ones, and you decide you want the strength to come down a little bit on it, or you want the strength to be really, really, really strong on it, you can do that. You can mess with the different hues. You can actually create your own basic color tonal adjustment without actually using a specific one. So you can sit here and mess with these all day long if you like. But I did want to mention that that little menu's down there and you can mess with that all. Okay, so next thing we're going to mess with is vignetting. So let me switch to my last image for doing that because it'll probably be more useful. This is an image of the beautiful Rachel, and I just thought this was a good shot to bring into Silver Efex Pro. So let's do that. I wanted to show you, my goal is here to show you in a few different situations. So we first showed you like a subject matter that had color involved in it with the gondolas, but it wasn't necessarily a full landscape photo. And then we showed you the trees, which are more of like a more open area with sky involved and things like that. And now I'm trying to show you a portrait, so that way you have some different ideas of how it works and how it can affect an image. So again, we can go through, we can mess with all the color filters. That'll boost certain things. We just cycle through these. And now it's just gotten a little crazy. But again, sit here, mess around, and then that's kind of cool because what Silver Efex Pro allows you to do, since all it's affecting is darks and lights of black and white pixels, you can kind of create some cool effects. So let's say, I mean, obviously she has really fair skin. She's very well shaped and toned, and so let's say I really want to add a more softer, more feminine look to her. I didn't really want it to be too gritty or too crazy. So what I can do is I can start messing with these a little bit and bring down, let's say we want to bring down the contrast a little bit to make the transition a little less harsh between the darks in the image and the lights in the image. Let's say that the darks and lights and the pixels kind of involved in here in her skin detail, I don't want those to be so much. So I'm going to bring down the structure a little bit and kind of soften up her skin a little bit. And we can even bring that down more in the fine structure and really make her skin soft. What we can do is, since we have these extras, we can decide, okay, well, I made her skin nice and soft, but I kind of lost some of the details and stuff that I really liked in here. So let's say I want to bring back up the shadow structure a little bit and kind of bring in, see, now I'm bringing back in the details a little bit in her hair and in her shirt, but I haven't lost that nice softness in her skin. And again, you can amplify the blacks a little bit if you want to make her eyes pop again and bring these back out. And so you can sit here and you can mess with this all day long and really kind of create really this beautiful image of how you want. But you can go the other direction with it. So instead of softening her skin and making her look all nice, reset these all back to 0. All I did to set it back to 0 is click on neutral again on the presets menu, and it reset all my sliders back to 0. But let's say I want to go the other direction. I really want to make these, as you can see, like share her jaw lines nice and defined here in her neck lines and the contrast of the shadow being cast across her face. Let's say I want to really boost that up some a little bit. So I could really bring down, like we could start messing with these a little bit, bring down the brightness and the shadows a little bit, but bring up the brightness and the highlights a little bit. We'll amplify whites a little bit. And we'll amplify blacks a little bit. So now we're getting a bit more contrast. We'll turn up the soft contrast even a little bit. And you can start messing with these things. See, structure really starts messing with it. You can really kind of see these lines really come into play now. And obviously this is looking a bit harsh. And so what I would do in this case is, if I was messing with this a whole bunch and I really wanted to make her these lines in her face harsh, I would actually go through and soften the pixels in her skin individually afterwards to kind of give it so she doesn't look so these pixels don't look so grainy and so overdone, but we could still maintain some of this. But I'm not going to go into all that, but I just wanted to show you kind of the range of what you can do to a portrait to go from being nice and soft and you know, easy on the eyes to being harsh and contrasty and high structured and more of a noir feeling to it. So I'll give you that. Alright, let's move on to the vignettes like I had promised you. I know we're 30 minutes into this thing already. Geesh. Alright, so what the vignettes are going to offer you is different options of basically vignettes like you'd think. You have your basic vignette, which if you see control, this is pretty even, easy transition from dark to light, from the outer to the inner. Lens fall off 2 is going to be a little bit harsher, and lens fall off 3 is going to be even harsher than that. So you can see it's just a step ladder. And then you can go reversed with a white frame where the outers are actually brighter. And again, step ladder to white 1 and white 2. And then you have these options for what's called black frame, which means that the fall off doesn't come as far into the image. So if you look, notice how that is different than that. And that's lens fall off 1 compared to black frame 1. And again, black frame 2 is just going to be even a more drastic option. And so let's say we just wanted to pick one of these. Ooh, lens fall off 1. Again, like everything else in Silver Efex Pro, you're going to have a lot of control over it. And so you can change the amount of vignette you have. You can see, so that's negative. That's going to make it whiter. That's going to make it darker to give you any extremes. And so you can choose where this is. And then you can even choose, I'm going to skip over a couple of these things really quick and tell you that if the center of your photo, which in this image would be right around her chin, let's say you don't want that to be the center of the photo. You want her right where her eyes are to be the center. You just click on this little icon here. It says place center. And then it's going to give you this little crosshair, and you just click where the center is. And you're going to notice that the light's going to shift. See that? So now we've lost more light down here, but we've gained more light up here, and then obviously the top fall off for the vignette has kind of gone off the top of the screen a little bit. And so you can replace it again if you want. Just simply click again and choose where you want it to go. So now we've gotten a little bit of that back. We moved it down a little bit. And then again, you can choose whether or not you want your vignette to be more circular shaped or more rectangle shaped. And as you can see, as we mess with it, can't quite notice it as much in this, but it's basically going to, instead of creating a halo circle around the center point, it's going to create more of a box. And if you watch the shadow as we do this, as I go towards rectangle, it starts filling in the sides of the image a bit. So it really just depends on the what you're going for. And again, size is going to affect the circle itself. So as you can see, that's no vignette. Basically, we bring our size down to 0, but we bring our size to 100. Let's switch vignette options, and you can see the option different, a lot more something like the black frame. So as you can see, as I bring it up, it's going to really bring in almost like a pinpoint light compared to not at all. And so you have a lot of control over these. And then you have options, of course. You have these options to, let me go back to no vignetting and show you how these work. You have these last couple of options to burn the edges, which instead of being like a vignette, will basically make it look like you kind of lit the edges of the photo on fire or something and just kind of screwed with them a little bit. It's not quite as even or quite as balanced as a vignette, but it allows for kind of a different effect of a vignette. So it gives you a little bit more of a dynamic, something like this is going to add a little bit of black in here and stuff, and just add kind of an imbalance, which will make it so that your eye doesn't get bored around the edges, I guess. It just really depends on the effect you want. And again, you have also the options of image borders, just like most other Silver Efex things. And you can get these kind of crazy little effects. And with both of these things, the burn edges and the image borders, you can affect everything, just like you could before. And so if you haven't noticed by now, as we're 35 minutes into this video, this is obviously becoming a very long video, but I really think that Silver Efex deserves this kind of attention because it is really one of the best tools outside of Photoshop itself that I think has come along as far as you can see, the versatility of it, what you can use it for. You can use it for landscapes, you can use it for portraits, you can use it for macro, you can use it for subject photography, use it for whatever you want. And you'll have the versatility with the control points and the different types of options that you have to really create an amazing dynamic image with any type of photo you want to use. And it's included in the entire Nik collection. I really, I'm not paid by Google. They've never even heard of me. They're not asking me to endorse this, but what I want to bring to you is the best tools you can use to create the photos that you have in your mind. So, and Nik collection to me is the best in black and white processing that there is available. It does work in Lightroom as a plugin also. You don't necessarily need Photoshop. I'm not 100% sure about Photoshop Elements. My guess would be that Google would include Elements, but I've actually never used Elements personally. I've always had the full version of Photoshop, so I'm not 100% sure about that. But I think this is a tool that everybody should have in their arsenal. Last thing we're going to talk about, and then I'm going to get out of here, is down here at the bottom under your histogram, under your loop, you have options to highlight over different parts of your image. And as you can see, as I move from darks to lights on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they're giving the different pixels highlighted on the image. And what this is allowing me to do is see what parts of my images fall under what categories of brightness and darknesses, and if there's anything being lost in the image. So in this case, you can see obviously on the brightest spectrum, I don't have very much, but on these mid-tones and in the darker parts of the image, I obviously have quite a bit of pixels that fall into that range. So it kind of helps you can select different types of things and mess with them or do whatever you like. So, all right. And then the last thing, let's see if this is going to do what I think it's going to do here. We click on brush. It's thinking. And what we have now is a masked layer. It basically just goes, okay, you want to bring that effect into certain parts of the image, but not all of them. So let's say for some reason I just wanted to make her face black and white, as you can see here. All I'm doing is left clicking to bring in make her skin tones black and white, but I'm leaving the rest of the image alone. And no, I'm not doing a very good job of it, but just to show you an idea. So for people who really enjoy selective color work, or people who if you just want to kind of mess with certain parts of your image and you don't want it all to this is really useful also when you're doing multiple Silver Efex layers. So let's say you wanted her skin to look nice and soft, and so you created a Silver Efex layer where her skin was nice and soft, and so that was good. In this case, I would have duplicated your background layer. Although it's not allowing me, I have to actually select this, but because I didn't start with the duplicate layer to begin with. So always duplicate your layers before you go in and mess with different filters. But in this case, so you would have made her skin nice and how you wanted to, you brush that in, and then we could have made another from the original, using the original color image, create another Silver Efex layer with more contrast and more details in certain images, and brush them in another. And that way you can kind of, without having to do everything within one image, it's great for if you want to create specific looking skies compared to specific looking foregrounds. I do a lot of multiple adjustment Silver Efex layers, so you don't have to do it all in one image. So that's where the brush tool comes in very useful. So alright guys, well I'm going to stop giving you all this information. I know it's a long introduction, but I want to give you a full introduction to the suite. And if you have any questions, you can just message me on leave comments in YouTube, message me on my website, bensviewfinder.com. Find me on Facebook, where I post my daily blog, obviously, along with my website. And I will do what I can to answer your guys' questions. And if something requires a follow-up video, I will obviously do it. So, thanks a lot, guys.